Welcome back to another episode of Men, Women and Happiness. And this week, I'm joined obviously by my co-host Leigh Kansler and our special guest, Leigh Stafford. Leigh Stafford comes from Uncommon Man and is really focused on helping guys increase their energy and move into abundance rather than lack. So effectively, his programs are about taking men from being stuck to unstoppable. So welcome, Leigh.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, guys. Great to have you here, Leigh. I think it would be lovely if we could start by you telling us a little bit more about yourself and how you began your journey of working with men.
Yeah, look, I always been pretty passionate about learning from the time I've been a bit of a lifelong learner. From the time I might have been 11, and I read a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And ever since then, I've been pretty passionate about self-help. Been through a lot of iterations in careers and a few other bits and pieces, largely in the finance industry. But along the way, I've been pretty passionate about coaching, had a lot of involvement in sport, footy in particular. And the older I got, the more apparent it became to me that I was stuck. And I was lucky enough to come across a number of things that helped me, work through it and create a life that, I absolutely adore now. And along the way, picked up a few things and eventually have found, my calling, I think. So that's how I ended up here.
Sounds awesome. It sounds like a very typical journey where people they start off doing things that are, run of the mill and all of that. And then along the way, you discover that that's not who you truly are.
Yeah, 100%. I think, being a lifelong learner and coaching and doing those sorts of things, that gave me a lot of information. I learned a lot along the way, but probably never really thought that I would end up helping men. But one thing that I kind of happened upon was just this groundswell of blokes that just need to be able to normalize not just this mental health, it's okay not to be okay stuff, but actually helping blokes take action. So to a fair degree, we've got to get in and basically ruffle some feathers and get guys out there putting their hands up to do this work. So, I couldn't be more passionate about it.
It's kind of a paradox, isn't it, mate? Like, you were footy, I was baseball, but, sports coaching and sporting that's relentless. I think one of the things that I experienced as a coach in baseball was just how brutal I was towards my players. And yet the work that you get done is the complete opposite of that, right? It's the complete opposite of being brutal. It's the heart space work that you talk about a lot, and that's a shift, isn't it? Really, but I imagine you notice the lack of it, having gone through more of a existential experience of hardness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, I was very much a relationship-based coach and still am. So I think from that perspective, I'd like to think that there was a connection, but upon reflection, knowing what I know now, I agree entirely with you. There were times where I was pretty savage on some people to try and get the response. But again, it really gets back to the way that we've been brought up, and particularly us middle-aged blokes, so to speak. The way we've been brought up is with this values-based self-esteem. That's what we seek, and values-based self-esteem is really largely around, is our ability to be able to win, to be able to get the next deal, to be able to provide, to be able to do whatever it is. So, it's not surprising that that's the way that we are, and that eventually we end up stuck, because where do we go? There's always something more to try and achieve, and that's the way we've been taught to get our self-esteem. So, yeah, it is a bit of a paradox, but I think we're starting to crack through that and starting to really help blokes understand the ability of getting into this heart space and getting out of up here.
It's interesting.
That's really interesting, yeah. I just want to comment about the values-based self-esteem. When I think of values, and this is, I guess, part of the masculine, feminine thing, when I think of values, I think more along the more softer kind of values, like the heart and the giving and all of that sort of stuff. So when you said that, I was like, hang on, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
it's quite interesting how we look at values in a different way and what's important to us. And that's definitely, as a middle-aged woman, what I was also taught was, you have to be giving and loving and kind and gentle. And if you're that type of woman, then that's a great thing. But for young boys of the same age, it was very different.
Yeah, and I guess that's where there's the protector thing that comes in with men too. I mean, there is these sort of two quite distinct gender roles that we've been brought up with to a fair degree, and
Yep.
I think it's a really good point. But it is more probably to delve a little bit deeper on that values-based self-esteem thing. It's more around what we're capable of doing, and that's largely for a man, that is largely how we base our self-esteem or our self-worth, which, to me are two separate things. So helping guys connect to their self-worth and move away from this sort of constantly seeking of self-esteem, that's where the challenge is, but that's also where a lot of the joy is too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I personally, I don't think I came to the conclusion until I was in my early 40s that the stuff I was doing wasn't working. And, is that common, Leigh, or is it, do you get guys coming in earlier or?
It's an interesting thing because I don't know what your experience is, Leanne, but, when we say it didn't work for us, for most of us, it probably worked till we were 25 or 30 because we needed our ego to keep us going. So, that real stoic attitude, keep working, you lazy bastard, keep pushing, doing all that sort of stuff, pressing on, and it probably really helped us get to the space that we maybe hoped we might get to at some point through our teenage years. The thing about that is, though, that what's next, we sort of lose the art of dreaming again. Once we get through that, we kind of get what we thought we needed and we go, is that it? So, for men, it's, it's not that these previous beliefs were wrong or that this values-based stuff or this protector, this alpha male protect thing is necessarily wrong. It's really up to us to determine whether it's right or wrong. It's just understanding that we have a choice around what it is we want to seek moving forward. And I think that's the significant part of this, The ego part of things is significant, or we need that until we get to our mid-20s. But what we've got to stop doing when we get to our mid-20s is saying, hey, that's the way I am. Because it's not the way you are. It's just the way that you've been programmed for 25 years.
And the emotional brain really continues to grow until we're around 28 and a little bit younger for women. And that's why we change so significantly when we hit our 30s and even more so our 40s because of all of our life's experiences. And, let's face it, we have a lot more energy when we're in our 20s. And when we get to our 40s and 50s, we start thinking, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to be working like a crazy person anymore. I want a different life for myself. And that's when we start questioning. But I wanted to go back because I'm thinking that there will be a lot of listeners who don't know the difference between self-worth and self-esteem. So I was wondering if you could just give a very quick, what's the difference?
From my perspective, again, because you can see, it's like these days, there's so much information out there. But, from my perspective, a really simple example, and this comes from pretty famous psychologist Terry Real, or Terence Real, and the definition of self-worth is understanding that I'm always worthy of love and connection.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean you can't cast a sober eye on your own behaviour, but it means that you're always worthy of love and connection. The self-esteem piece is where we're seeking it externally. And, for men, as I said, it's largely around what we're capable of doing, right? For women, quite often it's others-based, where they're looking for somebody else to tell them, hey, you're doing a great job. Thanks for everything you do for me, that love piece, and then there's those that, that then it's attribute-based about what I have, right? That's the third sort of level of self-esteem. So I love the way that that's constructed, and then that concept of grandiosity and shame that comes from that. But I think the self-esteem and self-worth, I think that's a really good, simple explanation of the difference between the two.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's a very important difference. And if those of you listening who have not heard of Terry Real, highly recommend him. He's got some great work, especially working with men and that sort of stuff as well. And relationships. He's an expert relationship therapist from the States who I've actually done some work with him as well. He's fantastic.
Yeah, got a couple of great. I mean, there's a book called "I Don't Want to Talk About It," which he has written specifically around men and anybody who wants to do the work in this space. Or it's a hard read at times, to be fair, but it's a ripper. And Fierce Intimacy is another great book for relationships. It's certainly helped my wife and I in our relationship.
It's funny you should mention that, because my next question to you was that in my observations, I did 100 interviews last year with 100 blokes, and you're one of them actually. And I couldn't get over what I describe as the glass floor. That there's a certain level of expression or emotional expression that we're capable of, and then we're out. What do you think's needed to get guys through that passage? Because what I found was that guys found it really, really easy to talk about things that were awful. But when it came to matters of the heart, it was lights out. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, I think it is a process. I mean, the first step in the process is for people, what I find particularly with men, is to actually identify what are the stories you're telling yourself. And that's a lot of the work we do in the first instance, is you need to write down, what am I saying to myself? What are the words I use? I mean, thoughts are a combination of two things effectively, and that's words and energy. So if you start to analyze what your internal self-talk is, right? Your internal self-talk generally, in my experience for men, is get up, you lazy bastard, keep going, keep going. Why did you do that? What's wrong with you? Why would you do that, right? Or the aggression piece, I need to be better. I need this grandiosity. I need to be better than that person. I need to be better than that person. So that's quite exhausting. So when that's the internal language that's going on, that needs to be addressed, number one. Once that's addressed, you can start to identify patterns. And when you start to identify patterns, you can start to recognize, these are the beliefs that I hold, and they have served me well. Like you said before, Leanne, to 20 out of 30, they served me really well, but I realize they're not serving me the same way they used to. So it's not about necessarily being able to throw those things out and say, well, that they were disgraceful beliefs for me to have. They got me to where I am now. So I think that's the second part. As you start to lean into that type of work, and as you start to slow down, and as you become more present, that's when you start to have an opportunity to be able to say, hey, let me lean into this heart space, because what is it I really want to achieve here? I don't have to be right or wrong. I don't have to listen to this ego-like mind that has to try and keep me safe by making everything black and white, right or wrong. I can start to lean in and understand that we live life in grey, and that's the space we want to be in. And when we start to do that, it allows us to connect to the heart space. That's notwithstanding a whole heap of breathing techniques and all sorts of things that we can help guys do. But the first instance is they've got to get to a point where they realise what they're saying to themselves and want to make a shift.
Yep.
Absolutely. And it can be so terrifying to do that. And it can lead to a lot of tears and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and self-reflection. But underneath all that, it can lead to a lot of joy and connection with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes me back to a client, because we work generally when I work with guys, I work in groups between 6 and 10 people. And the beautiful part about that is that we realize that we're not on our own. And it takes me back. I remember in the very first session, we asked people to think about their dreams. What did they dream about when they were a kid? And then what are their dreams now? We then asked them to then come up with the reasons they didn't achieve those dreams, right? What's actually stopping you from getting there? And I remember one guy in particular said, I don't like myself, and that's pretty strong. And, in that first instance, we asked them to change their language. As I said, it's thoughts and energy, right? And he said, so can I actually write down, I like me? And I said, well, what if you wrote down, I love me? And that was like red flag. And this guy had been through some stuff. Like he'd lost his wife, his sister, and his mother in a period of about 12 months. And he had 3 kids that he was looking after on his own, right? He's from New Zealand, down in Geelong, and it was pretty emotional. But by the end of it, the beautiful part about this is the beautiful part of these stories, right, is that we create a mind movie at the end of it, which is a statement of intention. And his statement of intention, the very first slide he had was "I love me," and I still get emotional thinking about it because he actually did, and the shift that he was able to create by doing the work and leaning into the work. I mean, he avoided doing a fair bit of the work, and you probably see that yourself in your practice, Leanne, as well. He avoided doing work for the first 8 to 10 weeks, but then he really leaned into it for the next 8 to 10, and suddenly it was just life opened up for him. It was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you have to feel quite safe with the people you're doing the work with to allow yourself, and I guess safe with yourself as well, and knowing that you can handle that intense emotion because you know, for 99.9% of the people, they can handle that intense emotion if they're well supported and they feel safe in that space.
Yeah, it's so true. You just have to create a safe environment. But I've got to say, the blokes that I work with, they're screaming out for it. And within 3 or 4 weeks, they are in a safe environment. But the beautiful part about it is it doesn't become a pity party. We just don't allow it to become a pity party. And that's, I think, where things change because it's, hey, you're coming here to do the work. This is activation work. So the work we do with guys is around giving them a system for mind and soul because most blokes will lean into getting fit, won't they? They'll lean into the physical aspect of it, right? Yep. So what we're all about is giving people a system for mind and soul. And that's where the magic happens.
And I guess in that context, you're sort of changing the social dynamic. I mean, one of the things for me particularly is that I've had an awful lot of girlfriends, and I don't mean in relationship, I mean friends, because I found that I was unable to talk about matters of the heart with my mates. I just went nowhere, right? So that's really fundamental to the system that you're creating in these groups is that you're meant to be openly expressive and heard, and allowing men to feel into each other's emotions as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of stuff around. Like there's a lot of these opportunities for men to lean into it. What I love about what we do though is that we want them to come away with a system at the end of it, so they can actually manage their self-talk. They can actually learn how to let go themselves. They can learn how to become present. They learn how to dream again and create excitement in their life and tap into their true north. And then to get this awareness back to their potential, because I think that's where we kind of lose it a little bit as we get older too, because it's like, well, it's not a young man's game anymore. I don't have all the dreams I had when I'm a kid because half the things I wanted to do when I'm a kid I haven't achieved. So it doesn't matter. What about making the best life for yourself now?
That's right. You don't have to be stuck in that.
Pardon me? Sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, you don't want to be stuck in being concerned about what I didn't achieve, because then that prevents you from achieving anything else or even having any happiness, because there's so much regret and resentment. And if we can learn to let go of that and look forward, that's when we can find happiness again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that's a gender-specific thing either.
Oh, no, definitely not. 100% not.
Yeah.
So for people who aren't watching this recording but listening, your program's called Uncommon Man.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to give the listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah, look, I probably maybe even peeling it back. I 5 years ago I came across a system called Quality Mind, and that system was put together by a guy called Richard Maloney. He built some systems around sport, funnily enough, which I'd used to a great level of success at a couple of footy clubs that I was involved at, and then premiership success at those clubs, and then Rich then moved that into a system that was around engagement in the workplace. And the two companies I had, we used that, and it was phenomenal. So we're at ground level for that. I jumped in at ground level of this Quality Mind piece, which was a system for individuals. And I kind of thought I knew it all a bit. First time I went through it, I went, oh, yeah, I'll get something from this. Probably went through about 75% rap power first time around. But then I was given then an opportunity. He said, would you like to become a mentor? And I thought, I would be useful for footy. And And effectively, what happened was it was quite useful. I put a few of the kids through a program, or I shouldn't say young men through the program, and then I had my best mate had been through his third divorce, and I said, "Hey, look, let me have a crack at running this program for you." And he was really in a bad headspace, and within about 8 weeks, he just had the light back in his eyes, and that's when I went, "Hey, this is something that I need to do." So.
Yeah.
So from there, I've had about 500 people go through programs with me now. I sort of moved into this full time in 2020. The uncommon man component of it now is that we have 4 6-month programs that we run. So consecutive 6-month programs for those who want to stay in. We have about 60% of people stay on through each of the programs we run. First program is really largely around, as we've spoken about today, learning how to manage your state. How do I actually manage my own state, and how do I create a statement of intention for my life? Once we do that, then the second piece of work that we do is then around, okay, well, now I know how to manage my state. What about me starting to bring some of these things I really want to bring into my life? So we work through some goal setting and getting really specific around saying, hey, these are the 5 or 6 things I want to bring into my life. That way you build further evidence that this stuff works. Once we've done that, we can really lean into an intention piece. So that's where we get really clear around, hey, what's my intention and where am I spending my time? So we get really, really granular about, hey, I've got 40 hours in a work week. What do I want to be doing with that? I've got 40 hours of social time for the week, with my family, friends, whatever else it is. What am I going to do with that? So you start to measure that, but understanding what that real intent is so that we're living a life full of purpose. And then the fourth component that we're working through at the moment, there's some amazing things happening in that is where we then get after that one project that you've been putting off all your life. So what's that one project and the one that represents your intentions, the bulk of your intentions around the 5 or 6 aspects of your life. So, it really is a journey from stuck to unstoppable.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so it's, who would have thunk it? But here I am. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So as we get close to time, I just wonder, Leanne, have you got any other questions for Leigh? And also, Leigh, is there anything you'd like to say to men out there that are feeling stuck, that might be in some way intimidated about doing the work?
A lot of it, when I speak to guys, a lot of guys, it's I'm broken. They actually think they're broken.
Yep.
So that's the thing I'll be saying to you. You're not broken. You're just stuck. It's that simple. Yeah, you're just stuck. And we've all, and I would say, without empirical evidence, but I would say 60 or 70% of blokes are stuck in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And
great.
really stuck, right? And putting your hand up, doing some work, it's actually not only brings you joy, but it's actually a hell of a lot of fun, right? To actually lean into life and take it by the balls and do the things you love doing. It's actually so much fun. So I think that's the big thing is, step up and take the help when it's there. I think I shared a story with you guys when we were chatting last week around, we created I was part of a group that put together a Facebook group called Blokes United through COVID. We ended up with 25,000 people in there in about 8 weeks. And it was fascinating. We were running free coaching sessions and we'd be lucky to have 20 guys show up. But we'd probably have 1,000 blokes in there talking about all the things that are going wrong, as you mentioned before, in their lives. I ran meditations in the morning and I'd have 600 guys flow through, but I'd probably only have 20 actually say that they were there. It's a fascinating thing. So step up and do the work because that's what's going to change your life. Like, stop sitting on it. It's all very well to have the conversation and say, I'm going to go around a mate's place and have a beer. Actually take some positive action.
So I've got one other question for you. I wonder how much of the systemic criticism of men in society holds men back from doing the work. Like, how much does that inhibit men from going? in the context of, oh my God, there's something else wrong with me. Like, what now? Like, really? Do you think that's a bit of a handbrake for guys?
100% it is.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it's, we're expected to be a completely different beast to what we were told we needed to be when we were 10 to 30. So of course there's some intimidation around it, right? But, one of my favorite quotes is, you can argue with reality, but you're always going to be 100% wrong. And that's kind of where we're at, right? Like, I don't see it changing. I don't think things are going to go back to a more Neanderthal world. I think we're only going to need to lean more and more into this. So, you get a choice about whether you want to do it or not. So, there's a lot of empathy because I've been there. There's a lot of, I still have those same thoughts, really? Do we really have to pull that stuff up? But then you go, okay, well, if that's what's going to be pulled up, do I want to argue with it, or do I just want to get on with creating, a great environment for me and the people around me? And I think that's more men that can lean into that, the better off we're going to be.
100%. Yeah. And I just want to finish off by saying to all of our listeners, no matter how you identify, that if you choose, or if you recognize that you're not happy, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean you have some sort of diagnosable mental health condition. It just means you're human. And there are so many therapists and coaches out there who are ready, willing, and able to help you make a change with no judgment, just walking with you where you're at, taking you slowly through the journey. And if you've had a bad experience with a coach or therapist, it's simply just like, you take your car to a mechanic, you don't like them, you move on, you find a better one. And finding a coach or therapist is exactly the same. If you feel judged or misunderstood, or you're just not clicking with that person, keep trying. Like don't give up on yourself. I can't tell you how many coaches or therapists I've seen over the last 15 years. And without that, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, because there was a lot of anxiety, shame, guilt, all of that, and not wanting to be seen in the past. But through working on that, I've made a complete turnaround. And same with you guys, you've done the work as well. And we are always progressing. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It just means that we have a little niggle that says something's not right. And I would really like to be able to explore that with love and openness and see where it takes me.
Yeah, I think, and I just want to wrap this session up by saying that, Leigh's personally helped me through some pretty difficult situations, and I can't recommend his work highly enough, or his persistence. I haven't been the best student of all time, but I just, anyone who wants to do the work of the Uncommon Man, it's leighstafford.com. And like I say, this is really important for us blokes to get real with ourselves and start landing into that heart space and figuring out who we want to be.
Yeah. And if I can just say one thing on that, the point you make is so spot on, Leanne, because I think the other thing is there is so much alpha stuff out there still. The David Goggins, it's all about, no quit, you never give up, you got to be consistent, get out of bed, do all this sort of stuff. And to me, it's just too much.
Yeah.
Right. That's not the space I work in. But you've got to be consistent, right? If I do 27 days out of 30, more often than not, guess what? I'm getting better every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's getting better every day. You don't need to be shamed into doing it, right? It's a choice. And I think that's a really important distinction between a lot of the stuff out there. I'm not saying some people won't respond to that exactly as you're saying, Leanne, right? It's a horses for courses thing. But I think for most of us, that shame stuff's got to stop. It's just about, hey, get out there, lean into it, have fun doing it. So I think there's a lot to be said for just a bit of kindness and self-compassion and care, and
yeah, cool.
Very true. Very true.
Any
Thanks so much,
Leigh.
No, it's been wonderful talking to you. It's great to see that there are people out there doing their best working with men. I've done quite a bit working with men as well, and it's a great space, because when a man chooses to work with himself, shift happens, and it's really beautiful thing to see.
It is, and I will say that when guys choose to do the work, they generally work. So it's pretty awesome.
They do, 100%. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody.
I want to thank you, Leigh, for your time, and thanks everyone for listening. Let's go after the uncommon man.
Absolutely. Let's become it. Cheers, guys.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.